Hi guys, hope everybody's having a great week. All right, let's get to it. This is week 3 on the videos. It's really week 4 in class. And this is our overview. Of course, we're studying the 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. Judicial is what we're going to be focusing on. That was chapter 10's reading for last week. And it's my favorite because we get to talk about laws and all that kind of stuff, which I love. All right. So executive, remember, means the president, vice president, the cabinet. President's the head of the executive branch. The judicial branch, think of judge, judicial, Supreme Court. And the legislative branch is Congress, the 2 houses of Congress. All right. You have the Senate. That's 2 people per state go to the Senate. So you only have 2 senators from your state, no matter where you're from. And then the House. And that depends on the size state, how many representatives you have in the House, how big your state is or how little your state is. Okay? And then we have the legislative. And that's 2 houses. All right? And that's what we were just talking about. You have the majority leader, minority leader, and Speaker of the House in the House of Rep. I know I taught you wrong before, I'm sorry. But you have the majority leader, the minority leader, Speaker of the House. I'm only still going to have you learn the 2 people I had you learn. You already know more than most adults if you know that, okay? So the majority leader in the House, you don't have to know for right now, but that's Eric Cantor. But I do have a picture of him for you, okay? Minority leader, Nancy Pelosi, and then the Speaker of the House, John Boehner. All right? And I just do this, you guys, because I need visual aids for myself. So you can do it however you want, but it helps me. All right, in the Senate, you have the majority leader, which is Harry Reid. You have a minority leader, and you have a president pro tem. You don't have to learn either of those right now. I just want you to know the majority leader, majority party is Democrat. In the Senate, majority leader is Harry Reid. The majority party in the House is Republican. Eric Cantor is the leader. The minority leader is Nancy Pelosi. Speaker of the House, John Boehner. How many houses of Congress? 2. Good. House, Senate. If you know nothing by the end of the semester, please, I want you to know that. 2 houses of Congress. Who confirms, by the way, the appointments to the Supreme Court? The Senate. Okay? It's important to know. All right. Here's a couple pictures I got for y'all this week, just so you know who we're talking about. Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader in the House. All right, let's see who else I have here. This is Eric Cantor, the majority leader in the House. Eric Cantor, you can see him. He's relatively young to be the majority leader, but this is John Boehner, Speaker of the House. And I'll show you another picture. Neither picture are very good of John Boehner, because he doesn't ever look usually that sad. John Boehner. I think that's all I have for the House. All right. And then I gave you guys a sheet. You should have gotten a sheet. Tell me if you didn't. That looks like this, where I have listed those people, just for your review. Especially since I taught you wrong, I need to teach you right. Okay? And the president pro tem in the legislature is usually... Oops, wrong side. The president pro tem is usually the senior member of the House. Of the Senate. So I didn't know that. That was kind of interesting. That's something that I learned after when I was looking it up. All right, so this is the branch we're going to be talking about today. The judicial branch, the Supreme Court. So far, we've learned 3 people, and I would like you to be able to recognize them, because the judicial branch is different than the other branches. Presidents are going to come and go. Vice presidents are going to come and go. Speakers of the House are going to come and go. A lot of the members of this Supreme Court are going to be here for years and years. Even when you're older, even maybe when you're my age, some of these guys will still be on the court. Well, that would be kind of pushing it, but maybe. Because they stay in office for a long time. They have lifetime appointments. That was an answer to one of your quiz questions. They have lifetime appointments until they resign. And a lot of times, like if a Republican is in and a Democrat gets in the White House, they will wait. They'll wait however long they have to wait till another Republican gets in, so that they can be replaced by another Republican on the court. Same thing with Democrats. Okay, it's not political, but it is political. So, because they want somebody who will kind of decide how they'll decide. All right. So, we're going to be talking about the judiciary. Get this sheet out that I gave y'all. There's 2 sheets that look like this. only they don't have notes all over them. But I always write notes on all my stuff. It's, it's just what I do. Okay, so you want to get these 2 sheets out. I'll give you a second to do that so that you'll kind of be caught up to speed, all right? This is kind of how I view the judiciary. This is in my mind. Probably no one else will give you something that looks as dumb as this, but this is how I view it in my mind. All right, you've got federal laws and court rulings like Roe v. Wade that we'll be talking about, and it supersedes state laws. So if we had a law saying abortion is illegal, well, once Roe v. Wade was decided by the Supreme Court and it became law that you can get abortions, it superseded all of our Texas laws, or what, I'm not sure what Texas had on the books then, but yeah, it was superseded all the state laws, and that was a real overreach by the judiciary branch of the government, because up until then states had decided whether they were going to allow abortion or not, and all of a sudden the judiciary decided for everybody. Supreme Court decided for everybody. So we're going to be talking about that. And then this is the case, Gibbon versus Ogden. That's important too, that talks about how states must enforce federal law. So if the federal law says abortion is legal, states must enforce that. They can't be putting people in prison and arresting people who perform abortions because the federal law is abortion is legal. So states have to enforce federal laws. If someone's breaking a federal law, like if someone robbed an armored car with federal currency or whatever, robbed a bank, you say, oh, we're not going to touch that because that's, that has to do with the feds. No, states have to enforce federal law. They must. It's their obligation and their duty, said this case, Gibbon versus Ogden, okay? So that's an important case to know. Things that I put on these 2 sheets you will need to know, even though you didn't have to do homework and all that this week. I still expect you to know the reading and to have done the reading, or I'm sorry, from last week, okay? There's a couple other very, very important decisions that I want you to know that they talked about in your reading from last week. One is Dred Scott versus Sanford. This was a terrible, terrible case, and to me a terrible day in American history, where Dred Scott went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court basically said, you cannot be an American citizen, you're a slave. So it was a terrible decision. It reflected the time back then, and I'm glad it's changed now. There's also another really important case called Marbury versus Madison. I remember learning that in school myself. A law of Congress is declared unconstitutional. That's called judicial review. So you have Congress. Let me get my little chart again. So Congress makes the laws, okay? They make the laws. Executive branch enforces the laws. Judicial branch, I think of it kind of as judges the laws. They judge whether the laws are constitutional, when they come to them, and they kind of judge on the Constitution. All right? So what that did was the judicial branch judged the legislative laws and said, nope, this law is no good. That's called judicial review. Usually the judicial branch is, it was cases that came up to them, and then they decided whether it's constitutional. But now judicial review means they're judging the laws that come from the legislative and the executive branch. That's kind of how they take that power of judicial review. That's called Marbury versus Madison. A lot of people know that case. I remember I had to learn a song to remember all my stuff. So Louisiana Purchase in 1801, Lewis and Clark, and Marbury versus Madison was in there. I had to do so many things just to remember all those names and dates that we learned. I know, that will embarrass my children that I did that. Let's see, Dred Scott, we've already talked about. Marbury versus Madison was what again? Right, a law of Congress declared unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court said, nope, John Boehner, you cannot pass that law. Of course, John Boehner wasn't in there yet. That law is unconstitutional. We're throwing it out. All right. Dred Scott, they said he couldn't be a citizen of the United States. Terrible, horrendous decision. There's books on it. There's a book by Dred Scott too. Gibbon versus Ogden, we've already talked about that on here, on that first sheet that I showed you guys, where Gibbon versus Ogden said you have to enforce federal laws. You have to. It's a requirement. It's your obligation. It's your duty. Let's see, extradition. What's extradition? It's on the bottom of your sheet here. Extradition means if you've committed a crime, let's say in Connecticut, and then you've committed a crime here in Texas, that if Connecticut asks us to, the governor of Connecticut asks us to, we send the person that we have that's committed a crime in our state back to Connecticut, where they originally did the first crime, so they can get tried there. After they get tried and sentenced and all that there, they can still be sent to us to be tried, and then we can have our crack at them. But usually you extradite to the place where they first committed the crime. Now that happens too. We also have treaties and things with other countries, and if somebody commits a crime in the United States, and let's say they flee somewhere like France, which doesn't believe in the death penalty, I think France will not extradite them to us if we say we're going to go for the death penalty. There's certain countries that say, I'm sorry, that's part of our treaty. If you're going to go for the death penalty, we're not sending them home. Well, then we'll have to guarantee we're not going for the death penalty. So treaties also supersede state laws. So we've got that going too, okay? Extradition means, of course, sending somebody to where they need to go, where they committed the original crime. Judicial review is the ability of the courts, the power of the judiciary. I'm going to read you the definition, which is confusing, and then tell you what to think, okay? The power of the judiciary, Supreme Court, to judge the constitutionality of legislative and executive actions. What that means is the courts can decide if it's constitutional or not. So the legislative, Congress passes a law that's not constitutional, or the president says, I am going to collect all the potatoes